The fear of the raiders lingered over Owa like a heavy cloud, shadowing every face and quieting every laugh. Each of us felt it. Even the children who had never seen them knew their stories, whispered in hushed voices after dark. It was like a ghost that haunted the village, creeping into our dreams and reminding us of those taken, those lost. But one afternoon, Obalewa came to me with a new look in her eyes, something fierce, something almost defiant. "Obalewa," she said, her voice low, "we can't just sit and wait. What if they come back?" She glanced over her shoulder, as if to make sure no one was listening. "I think we need to do something to protect ourselves, to scare them away if they ever return." I felt a shiver of excitement rise in my chest, mixing with the fear that was always there. "But, how?" I asked, feeling the familiar pang of helplessness. "We're just children, Obalewa. What can we do against them?" Obalewa's face hardened. "There are things more powerful than weapons, Obalewa. We have our own spirits, our own ancestors who walk with us. We have the Gangan spirits." Her voice dropped to a whisper as she spoke the name, her eyes glinting with determination. The Gangan, the masquerade spirits that our people called upon in times of trouble, their ghostly figures and fearsome faces meant to protect and defend. I had seen them once during a festival, their towering forms cloaked in layers of colorful cloth, their masks fierce, carved to resemble the spirits of old. What if we make ourselves into a masquerade? Obalewa continued, her eyes bright with excitement. We could be the spirits of Owa, coming to defend our village. If the raiders see us, maybe they'll think twice before trying to take anyone else. My heart pounded with a strange mixture of fear and thrill. The idea was wild, dangerous even, but it felt powerful, like we were reaching out to something bigger than ourselves. I nodded, a grin spreading across my face. "Let's do it." Over the next few days, we gathered a small group of the remaining girls, whispering our plan in hidden corners of the village, away from the watchful eyes of the elders. Each of them listened with wide eyes and nodded, their fear slowly turning into excitement. Together, we began to search for materials, scavenging bits of cloth from the empty homes of those who had been taken, old tunics and wrappers, discarded scarves, and woven strips of fabric left behind. It felt like we were gathering pieces of them, a part of each lost soul joining us in our new purpose. We met under the thick, twisted branches of the iroko tree in the evenings, stitching the scraps together by the dim light of flickering oil lamps. The result was a patchwork of colors and textures, some pieces faded, others vibrant, all sewn together into a garment that began to look like the skin of an ancient spirit. Each time we added a new piece, it felt like we were inviting another ancestor into our fold, asking them to protect us. Once we had the base, we added what we could find to make it truly fearsome. Twigs and dried leaves from the forest, woven into the cloth to rustle like bones when we moved. We found pieces of old animal hides and shells, tying them around the waist and ankles so they would rattle and thump with each step. A few of us had feathers, too, which we threaded through the fabric to give the figure an eerie, bird-like presence. For the mask, we used the hollowed-out gourd that we carved and painted with dark, wide eyes and a fierce scowl, each of us taking turns adding our own marks, our own touches, as if we were infusing it with our very souls. By the time we finished, the mask looked alive, wild and frightening, as if it had come from a world beyond ours. Finally, the day came when we were ready to test it. We waited until dusk, when the light was fading and the village began to settle into the quiet of evening. I wrapped myself in the makeshift Gangan garment, the heavy fabric settling over me like a second skin. The girls gathered around me, their faces a mixture of pride and awe as they watched me transform. I could feel the weight of each layer, the presence of everyone we had lost woven into its seams. With the girls behind me, we stepped out of the shadows and into the open, moving slowly, with the same steady rhythm of the true Gangan. I let my steps fall heavy, the leaves and shells rustling and clacking, the mask staring ahead as if it could see into every soul that watched. The villagers stopped what they were doing, their eyes widening as they turned to see us. Some gasped, others crossed themselves, their faces a mixture of fear and wonder. "Spirits have come to protect us," someone whispered, and a murmur spread through the crowd. Just as we had hoped, the people believed. Even the few elders who had seen the real Gangan before began to mutter to each other, their eyes gleaming with new hope. A feeling of power surged through me as I moved with the costume, as if something ancient was flowing through my veins, something fierce and untamable. But just as I was about to turn back toward the iroko tree, a loud voice rang out. "Obalewa." It was Uncle's voice, sharp and unmistakable. He stepped forward, his face drawn and stern as he looked me over, his eyes narrowing at the patchwork garment and the gourd mask on my head. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice low and intense. "You children think this is a game?" I froze, the feeling of power slipping away as quickly as it had come. The other girls shrank back, their faces pale, but Obalewa stepped forward, her chin held high. "It's not a game, Uncle," she said, her voice steady. "We are protecting the village from the raiders." Uncle's gaze softened, his eyes flicking over the makeshift costume. He looked back at me, a hint of pride in his face beneath the worry. "The raiders may not understand our ways, but they fear what they don't know," he murmured, almost to himself. "Perhaps you are right to use the spirits, guys." With a sigh, he reached out and touched my shoulder. "But you must be careful, Obalewa. The Igangan is sacred. Do not play with its power lightly." I nodded, my heart still racing as I removed the mask, the weight of his words settling on me like a heavy stone. The girls and I glanced at each other, a new sense of responsibility filling our eyes. This was more than a game now, it was a pact with our ancestors, a promise to protect our village no matter the cost. And that night, as we prepared to hide our costume in a secret spot by the Irako tree, I could almost feel the spirits watching us, their unseen presence lending strength to our purpose. We were no longer just children. We were warriors, defenders of OWA, with the power of the spirits on our side.